The lecture this afternoon will be Penetration, Focalization, and Control of Consciousness. First, I want to make clear that we are dealing with what can be termed a dispersion in the universe itself. And the illusion of space and time is probably actually a myth. In other words, you start with a photon of light, and you may build a sun out of that. And you will have probably a Grund, and then you will have to have some space into which to project your Grund. You can call this the Ungrund. The realm of the created and the realm of the uncreated. And so we recognize, as our scientists of our world have said, that the universe may be like a balloon, and somebody is blowing it up. And so the illusion of space would vanish in the curvatures of space. And after all, how important is it that we understand that in its vast macrocosmic scale? But what we are interested in is understanding the consciousness by which we understand everything else. Each of us individually is given by God a consciousness. The consciousness God has given to us is really our own, because He gave it to us. It is no more His. It belongs to us. But in a very strange sense, He still has a mortgage on it. Do you understand that at all? I mean, it comes from Him. And it eventually is expected to return to Him because He gave it for a purpose. Why did He give us consciousness in the first place? He gave it to us so that we could acquire. And what is it He wants us to acquire? He wants us to acquire understanding. Did He or did He not say, with all thy getting, get understanding?
Yes, He said that.
He said that. And He meant it. And therefore, in the sense that man has free will, the Father gave him a consciousness which he can bend to his own liking. It has been proven that individuals can think very bad thoughts and do very bad deeds. Witness the conspiracies of the Machiavellis or the poisonings of the Borgias. Down through history, we have seen men like Cardinal Richelieu, and we have been astounded at the strange level of their thought, which could in some way or other unite one moment with God and the next moment with the evil forces of the world. We've seen this also in the late Rasputin, who could turn around and reach out and take what he wanted from the world, and then when he wanted to be pious, he could look up to heaven and pray, and lo and behold, a person would be healed. This has always been very difficult for man to understand, especially in the light of the fact that the Bible says, mine eyes are too pure to behold iniquity. I think then all of you should understand that God never, ever thinks iniquity. Only man, through his misuse of the free will which God gave him, thinks iniquitously. Well, where does he think? He thinks in his consciousness. And because there really is only one consciousness, it being polarized according to different vibratory rates, there is a simultaneous preoccupation already of space by the various consciousnesses of man. In other words, Marguerite Baker there, she thinks she's thinking all by herself. Right alongside of her, of course, we find Dr. Olivia Bryant. She's also thinking.
Octavia.
Dr. Octavia, didn't I say that?
No, he said Olivia.
I meant Octavia, excuse me. I don't know what's wrong with me that I seem to once in a while get these tortoises and hares mixed up. Anyway, I knew your name. I went to India with you. I still do know it. There they sit together, and they both have minds. Now maybe one would be in Los Angeles sometime, and one sitting over here in Colorado Springs. But in actuality, it wouldn't make any difference whether they were in Darjeeling, India, or in Colorado Springs, or where they are. The mind is simultaneously occupying almost the total of macrocosmic space at the same time that it occupies the total of microcosmic space, because there is an interchange between the macrocosm and the microcosm, and don't you forget it. Honey child, you are reaching out and influencing the whole universe by your thought. And that is why there is such a thing as the tree of life in the midst of the garden that is guarded by the flaming cherubim, because God had to retreat behind the sacrosanct realm of infinity in order to preserve the order and purity of being there. But to man is given this portion of the sacred fire that is a spark of the divine intelligence that does fill and influence the whole cosmos. And please don't think that somebody practicing witchcraft in England or Texas or Louisiana or Haiti cannot influence the whole world. But please don't get some kind of a crazy idea that a man or woman invoking light anywhere on earth cannot also influence the whole world. And because light is stronger than darkness, light will ultimately overcome, and light will rule everywhere, and darkness will fall. In connection with spiritual darkness, one of the forms of spiritual darkness that I have always incisively found to be the most evil of all is that miserable spirit of gossip which goes out into the world. I believe that there is nothing more malevolent than for people to try to turn other people against each other. I believe this, and I believe that is one of the causes why we have so much density in the focalization of consciousness. When you start to take a divine seed thought of truth into your consciousness, and you are going to meditate on it, and you are going to send it out into the world, do you know that it is actually, in many cases, challenged by the universe, put to a trial and error to see whether or not it is a thing of value? And the universe either accepts what you send out or it rejects it because of its inherent characteristics. So try to make your matrix in focalizing your consciousness powerful and honest. Don't just try to make it powerful. A lot of people try to make it powerful, and that's where they strain their own power aspect and their love aspect and their wisdom aspect. Everything is strained about them because they don't understand what is actually taking place. People ask me, they say, where do you get the energy from that you can stand up there for so many days and talk to us and all of this? Well, the energy comes from God, and to God it returns. But it is because basically I have certainly an honest heart toward everyone on this planet. I believe with all my heart that my wife is like this also, and most of our staff are this way, and I like to believe that most of our students are this way also. I have found through the years that the unfortunate thing that has often happened with people is that rather than become constructive, they have become destructive and sought to find fault with someone. That's why I rather laughed at that tortoise and hare bit, you know. Because the other night, after I had taken the dictation from Maida the first night there, and I had been through all of the different sessions with you, I happened to be just a tiny bit tired, and unconsciously I switched that. And you know that's very easy. I heard President Kennedy, the late President Kennedy, do the same thing. I mean, he was a pretty smart man, and he just got something all balled up one time, and he was talking in Washington. So I realized this can easily happen. Well, I was kind of glad that it happened, because it was almost a perfect demonstration of the fact that human nature would probably remember that more than they would some of the good things that I said. You see? Isn't that true? You know, people say, well, he got mixed up. Well, you know, the main thing is not to be permanently mixed up. We can all get mixed up or muddled once in a while in maybe an expression. But to be permanently mixed up is something else. The guy or the gal that can mix you up permanently, they're the one you want to watch out for. You see what I mean? So when we deal with the penetration, the focalization of consciousness, these are the factors. Space itself is charged with the bric-a-brac of human thought. It is also charged with a constructive thought simultaneously of the masters of wisdom. And this is what probably provides the good conductor through space for the good thoughts. It's a matter of affinity. When you have good thoughts, remember they are always going with God. Via con Deus, go with God. See, that statement, via con Deus, is rather interesting because I took Latin in school and I found out that there was a Latin word, I think it was called a via, and that to me denoted the flow or the way to go, you see. Via is the way, and that is a Latin. What is that?
Via is a road also.
Oh, I know that.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I know that. And so the road or the way or whatever you want to call it is out here. And you have to realize that something has to travel over that road. Now this is a myth in human consciousness, because when we took an airplane from Santa Barbara, California, and then landed eventually in Bombay, India, on the other side of the world, we thought we were going somewhere. But in actuality, thought doesn't have to go by airplane or jet. Thought can travel on its own thought waves, just the same as radio and television broadcasts travel all over the world. So the thought waves of human thought can actually travel anywhere. You people then here can very easily, in the case of a man taking LSD, can go on a trip where he contacts the either discarnate or even incarnate entities from the opium dens of China. Do you understand what I'm talking about? People can send their thought waves anywhere, and they don't have to take LSD to do it. That's the beauty of it. They can do it better without it, because they are more in control. If they take a drug, they may be in a form of trance state where they go out here all right, but who are they? They're a balloon drifting in the wind. Any force that they contact in the astral realm can mold them. So what we really want then is to get people to understand that they, through God, can learn how to penetrate the densities of the world. Every time you send out a thought, supposing it's a good thought, and you've got another guy out here thinking a bad thought, that is the focus or force of density in the human world mind that causes all these problems to the penetration of your thought. And there are two ways you can get by it. One is to neutralize it, and the other is to increase the power of your own thought. If you make your own thought more powerful, you can penetrate the density with it. Or you can neutralize the thought and cause it to relax its own intensity so that you can penetrate it with less power. Do you see what I mean? So all of these different laws governing penetration of consciousness are active in the world. There is a saying, I believe it's in German, that goes like this. It's Weltschmerz, world pain. Do you people, any of you, ever feel the pain that is going on in Poland right now that the great master spoke about a while ago, or I think, was it last night, or was it this morning? Great Divine Director. You know, I'm only a listener, so I sometimes do not hear or record these things till I hear them back to my own consciousness. I'm awake, but I still don't always remember everything. I don't think you do either. So the point I'm trying to make is, do you people ever feel the world pain of people that are not necessarily part of you? Well, I contend in this drama of penetration and focalization of consciousness that we often tune in without meaning to, and a lot of little dramas that are going on in the world with the radio of our own mind and being, the radio of our own soul. Now, I think it is very important to be able to have the proper concentration, to be able to tune out as well as to tune in. And I have every once in a while letters written to me on obsessional insanity, and I want to discuss it with you as part of this lecture. I have people writing to me saying that ghosts, hobgoblins, witches, black forces, negativity, dreams of death, all kinds of horror problems are coming to them, and they want to know how they can get rid of it, and will the Summit Lighthouse please help them? A lot of these people, most of these people, in fact I think all of these people, land in the healing chalice. Many of them respond immediately to our treatment. Some respond partially. And a few, I've had one or two, that don't respond at all. Now the factor of human karma must be taken into account. Jesus did not, contrary to popular opinion, heal everybody that he contacted and everybody that contacted him. There were those he did not heal, for the simple reason that their karma demanded that what they had done to others or to life should be returned to them first. I remember one of the dictations given in Washington, D.C. that particularly was close to my heart. It said, according to the decree of this man's karma, he should have been born without arms and without legs. But by the intercession of, I think it may have been Kuan Yin or someone, he was born with arms and with legs, but he could not use them. At least he was not marred image-wise. He didn't look so terrible. And believe me, do you remember that thalidomide? A lot of women took that, and they had children without arms and legs too. So, I mean, this is not something that I'm dreaming up. It came from the archangelic realm. And it clearly pointed out that karma has an effect on people. I want to assure you, and I want to guarantee you in this lecture, that many people you meet walking down the street with terrible problems, I've seen some problems so horrible that I hate to even think of them, are actually the outpicturing or manifesting of human karma from past ages because of the wickedness that those people did in the past. And this is the karma that they have with the mercy of God. Think of what it would be without the mercy of God. So, I believe that we have enough love and beauty in the kingdom of God to warrant our following the consciousness of God and penetrating the density of humanity and our own density with the mind of Christ. So I want to point out to you that there are many forces in the world that are actually vampire forces that want to steal your energy and plot to take it from you. Whenever you start to penetrate the world mind, they do not like it. Because if you penetrate the world mind with thoughts of Christ, thoughts of God, thoughts of love, thoughts of harmony, thoughts of peace, you are going contrary to the machinations of the people that want to control the world. Pavlov, the Russian scientist who developed the system whereby he would ring a bell and then later on put a testing instrument on the salivary glands of the dog, would be able to induce saliva or salivation in the dog's mouth by ringing the bell without even giving the dog any food, thus beginning the first principle of psychic brainwashing. Everyone should understand then that you have to contend with many minds whenever you set about the business of working for God. The only way you're ever going to be able to master it then is to be able to get a lot of help from the higher realms. I think the great divine director pinpointed that this afternoon when he said we should evoke the angels. I think many times we try to do it alone. We try to go it alone. And I think many times we prematurely try to project thoughts out into the world. Remember, just as you are trying to project thoughts out into the world, there are hundreds and hundreds of people trying to beam thoughts to you. And they don't have to know you in order to do it. For example, behind the Iron Curtain, there are any number of what has been termed by some of us as thought police. These people are particularly acting on behalf of the socialistic regime, and they constantly beam to the minds of people here in the West that they don't even know thoughts about National Socialism and the preference of the Soviet Union over the American way of life. Now at first you'd say to yourself, well, this is a very horrendous thing. How in God's name can people accept that? You also look at some of the guys that are married to some of the gals and you wonder how in the world she ever accepted him or her. Don't you? And all you got to do is go down the street. And when you see some of them walking together, you'll wonder real hard as to how they ever accepted. I sometimes think there's an element of horror in people, that they actually enjoy being married to something so opposite to themselves that I really can never quite figure it out.
They can't either.
Well, the main idea then in this penetration and focalization lecture on consciousness is to first make your determination that you're going to go to God and get the matrix. And the matrix will usually fit one of the thought forms of joy, peace, love, harmony, friendship, wisdom, and you know, the various constructive thoughts. So you'll get the matrices of these thoughts, and then you make your determination that you're going to expand it into the microcosm. Now, there is a book out, and I have a copy of it upstairs, if I had the time to show it to you. It starts out dealing with the macrocosm and the microcosm from a very interesting standpoint. It shows a girl sitting in a rocking chair in Amsterdam. She's sitting there in a rocking chair by a big stone U-shaped building. And first you see her only. Next slide you see, from up in the air, you see her sitting in the yard and you see the building. And then you go up higher over Amsterdam, you see the streets. And then you wind up where you're way up and you see the Hague and all the different areas all over out into the North Sea and everywhere. And then after a while you go up so you're covering half the hemisphere of the world. In a way you can still see that dot down there that you know is that girl. And then pretty soon you go up till you see the world in space. And then you go out further and you see the planets. And then you see the whole solar system. And then after a while you see the galaxy. And then it turns on its side, and then after a while you see the galaxy from a distance. And then you see the whole universe. And then you begin to see other island universes. And you keep on going on and on and on until you've gone into infinity, and after a while you're in a whole world that's a sea of white stars. They're all sun systems and universes. And there's no differentiation at all. Then you start turning the pages and you see the girl sitting in the rocking chair, and then you see she has a ring on her hand or something. And you go down, and the first thing you know, I think there's a bee sitting there, a fly or something, I don't know what it is. Then you go down a little lower, and you see the cells. And then you see the bloodstream, and you keep on going till you get clear down to the atoms. Then you begin to go into the nucleus of the atoms, and you go down the other way. And the idea is that man has a microcosm of selfhood. He has a miniature world all inside of his own physical body. And he also has an outer world. So when you start to penetrate yourself with ideas of health and godliness and beauty and joy and peace and harmony between people, you have to draw enough energy according to the particular segment of space that you want to contact. If all you want to do is contact yourself, well, that takes so much energy. You can learn to use it. And you want to contact more people, you put out a little more energy. The big problem is that people don't think in terms of infinity. They think in terms of the finite. They say to themselves, well, that's all the energy I've got. Bunk. You've limited yourself. You have all the energy that God has. All you have to do is learn to use it. And if you're going to use it constructively, you have to recognize that even God would encounter these obstacles of thought if he were to start to penetrate substance with the energy. So you're no different than God is. You get my point? People put up these negative walls. They put up these negative barriers. And you know what some of these barriers are? What you call hardened opinion. Hardened opinion. I don't believe in that. I believe that anybody, if Adolf Hitler were sitting in the other room in here, and he really wanted to find God today, I wouldn't care about his karma. I wouldn't like that. But if he wanted to find God and he came to us and said, I realize I've done terrible things in the past, I want to find God, I believe that we could accept the possibility of change in him. And I believe that it was Judas Iscariot. We could accept the possibility of change in him. Why don't you try accepting the possibility of change in yourself when you start to understand how to project your consciousness out? First of all, change your own consciousness. Work on that for a while. Till you've got your own consciousness and your own house in order. Then start sending out world thoughts. Don't start sending out world thoughts at a time when you're also in the state of chaos, because if you do, you're going to transmit that chaos along with all the other things you are. In one way, you are already doing that. But when you don't make the conscious effort to do it, you don't use so much power, and therefore you don't affect so much penetration of the world thought. Do you see what I'm trying to drive at? This is a very sound principle. instead of sending out the world thought prematurely, send out the thoughts to produce the godlike manifestation in yourself so that you won't be bored. You know something? I have people come to these dictations. I have people that listen to these dictations all over the world. An awful lot of them like them. But there are some people that get bored with them and turn them off halfway through. And they say, oh, let's do the Hail Mary, or let's do something else. We've listened to this dictation. We've heard enough of Jesus. Let's turn him off. And this happens. I have people come here on a Sunday night when there isn't anything more important in the whole universe than this teaching. They come here at about 7:30, and by 8:30 they're ready to go home. I let them go about 9, but that extra half hour really pains some of them, so they don't come back anymore. Others tell me that this is the most interesting study they've ever had, and I believe it is. I think that our sermons are better than most churches in the whole world. But you know something? They are geared to 1 hour. They're 1 hour people, and it's very hard for them to get over the idea of 1 hour. Well, how else are they ever going to get anywhere unless the teaching's given to them? Oh, they might go over to India to some yogi, but you know what time they get up over there and start their mantrams? 4:30 or 4 o'clock. Well, you think we have sessions. They have sessions every day over there in their ashrams. That's how they get to where they're going. I think it's about time that we get where we're going, too. So we have the focalization, the penetration of consciousness. But let's penetrate the hardness in our own hearts. Let's ask the love of God to come down and saturate us. Let's ask the wisdom of God to saturate us. Let's help God along a little bit. Let's think with him. Instead of resisting him, let's understand there's a lot of forces want to keep us out. I'm going to tell you one law to close with on this lecture. It's the law of decrees. When new people come in here and have never heard decrees before, this is a many-faceted thing I'm going to tell you. You know, I think it was this lady that was studying and practicing witchcraft. She said that we sounded like a Black Panther meeting here. Well, I don't think most of you know it, but the Black Panthers, I believe, made a study of our decrees before they ever started their work. And they use decrees constantly in a negative way, in reverse, because they know the power of decrees. Now, Mrs. Booth, are you here?
Yes, here I am.
What did you hear on the streets from the Black Panthers that were chanting on the streets of your city?
Of Hayward, on the day
Hayward, California.
on the day of Martin Luther King's funeral, they had a demonstration of chanting, "We've got the power, power." I don't want to say it as they were, power, and then get off the street to each white person they saw. And their rhythm was the same as ours, but the power was absolutely
Satanic.
It was terrible.
Terrible power. But they also use that, we've got the power, we've got the power, we've got the power, get off the street, get off the street, get off the street. Instead of saying, beloved, I am, well, they were no doubt, saying other things. And you will hear this like, police go home, police go home, police go home, go home, go home, police go home, police go home, police go home, go home, go home. Well, you see, yes?
How about these whistles that the Japanese use when they get into rhythm?
Well, it's all energy, and when it's in rhythm, it's harder. I'll explain to you one law of rhythm that has to do with the marching troops across the bridge. Every time they come to a bridge, they're always put at ease, and they're not marched across. They go across the bridge, in a dismissed state. Staggered. Right. Now, why is that? You know what happened to the bridge if they went across in rhythm? It would be destroyed because the walls of Jericho were torn down. Back in the time of Jericho, the same way, by the priests marching around the walls of the city. A violin string can also break a crystal goblet, and a woman can sing a certain level. Did you know that? You know you can break the glass in the room? I believe you could. Well, I want to get back to this law of decrees. The moment a new person comes in the room and they listen to you decree, right away they come in with entities. Now, practically every human being on earth has entities at one time or another in their life. They're like the barnacles on a ship. They're there. Most of us don't pay any attention to them. You don't pay attention if you have a wart somewhere on your body, do you? So the people don't understand, but these entities talk to you. And when you come in here, a person coming in here for the first time, they'll say, look at those silly people. Oh, they're silly. This is a ridiculous nut house, a nut factory. Why, whoever heard such a thing as people making those decrees? Doesn't it say somewhere in the Bible, and the heathen will repeat vain things over and over and over? Well, it does, you know. But I don't think these are vain things. And this repetition is perfectly valid, you see. But you know what happens? If they keep on listening to your decrees, and if they start to decree, their entities will get out. The entities will have to leave them. So the entities make them get out. Before the entities have to leave, they make the person get out so they can stay at home. See that? When you deal with the penetration and focalization of consciousness, then you see, these people are never actually penetrated by divine ideas. Not at all. There is no focalization of the primal sanities of nature, as Walt Whitman said, that are in their thinking. They don't reason. They go up here to Colorado College, and they study for 4 years to be something or other, maybe to have their BS degree. And they come in here, and in 1 hour, they're ready to walk out. Even in the midst of a sermon. Did you know that on Sunday nights I have very few decrees here for the sake of the public? And even a real good sermon, they're ready to walk out. They don't want to hear the truth. They come and they listen and they go away. This organization is probably more attacked than any other because of its decrees. But we are not going to stop decreeing because that's what brought us here. That's what brought us here. That's why we're here. Because the decrees are fulfilling the needs of our soul. Why? For heaven's sakes, the subconscious is literally littered with all kinds of bad ideas. We give these decrees and we straighten ourselves out, realign ourselves. We free those energies inside of ourselves. We become powerful beings. Almost everything has been done here through decrees. All of us have benefited by it. How about you, Jeffrey?
Yes, indeed.
When you came here, you were far different, were you not? You see? Now they sit in here, these boys, and they whip up a storm with Australia, 11 o'clock at night, working hard. You know what the boys did here? It really touched my heart. A group of the new boys that were on $20 salaries, they started tithing, giving 10% of that to the masters. Wasn't that a terrific thing? They had a bowl of money sitting over here that they had put together. But it really touched my heart. I was moved by it. So you folks see that there's a lot of things involved in summitry, more than you ever dreamed of. So please try to remember to straighten out the microcosmic man, you. And remember, it isn't going to take forever to do it. If you set your mind and heart to it, I would go so far as to say you can go a long way in 1971. Probably by July, a lot of you who have never done this before will be ready to start projecting into the world thought. Spend about 6 months projecting into yourself. That the first half of the year be devoted, not exclusively, because some of you are already trained, but those of you who are starting out, begin to do both. Those of you who are already qualified. Project into yourself simultaneously and then get the messages from God, what you can send out to the world, meditate on the world thought, you see? Send out love and help to these people in the banner of freedom, as the great divine director said. This will end my lecture on the penetration and focalization of consciousness.